So, The Electric State is the story of Michelle, who is a young girl who has a robot companion who is traveling the wasteland looking for some kind of resolution. She's heading towards some kind of place to figure out why she has a robot friend and what's gone wrong in this modern America of the alternate 90s where thousands of giant robot corpses litter the landscape, and everybody is wearing these giant headsets called neurocasters where they see visions of a future that they're not in. Sounds awkward, but that's the premise of The Electric State, the graphic novel from Simon Stålenhag is the original author, which is a kind of sweeping piece on isolationism and loneliness in a dystopian future surrounded by advertising and a culture that has gone way too far past where they should have and now can't go back. Unfortunately, Netflix's The Electric State is not really that original graphic novel. It takes the best parts of that, which are the visuals and the art design that Simon Stålenhag put into it, and surrounds that with a family-friendly romp starring Stranger Things' Millie Bobby Brown and Guardians of the Galaxy star Chris Pratt. I feel like Netflix's adaptation is very different, of course. In it, Millie Bobby Brown plays Michelle, who has a younger brother who is possessing the body of a Cosmo robot. It's this cute little yellow robot, big round head. And when she finds out that her younger brother, who she thought had died previously in a car crash, is somehow in the body of this robot, the two of them decide to travel across the country to get to this robot headquarters. From Center is the name of it, where all of the robots come from and all of the neurocasters in this world come from. Neurocasters are these headsets you put on where you can just like take command of a drone, and that drone can go out and live your life, and you can just sit quietly at home, like in a lounge chair, right, in your underwear. The alternate dystopian future everybody's afraid of. Michelle, along the way, with her brother, runs into Chris Pratt's character, who is a smuggler, all too similar to Han Solo, with an awful haircut, and a Chewbacca-like robot of his that can get into bigger and smaller versions of itself, like a Russian nesting doll. So you can go like giant robot or like super tiny robot, right, and everything in between. They meet a handful of other robots, right? You got Mr. Peanut, who's like the Mr. Peanut from Nabisco, and you got you got a haircut robot, and you got a robot that looks like a Zoltar machine. Really, really fantastic robot design in here, but all comes from the original work that again is about loneliness and isolation and depression and living after an apocalypse. Much more like Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Netflix's The Electric State is not that. That is not what they're doing here. We're going for a 2-hour action adventure family romp that's got few actual actors in it and a ton of very expensive CGI. Coming from directors Joe and Anthony Russo, had previously done Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. This is their next follow-up with Netflix. Andy, what do you think?
Oh man, so I think overall this is pretty bad, but there are some positives about it. Man, it's just it's Netflix paint by number film. All the characters are so stock, and it's like a Hallmark movie with a big budget about sci-fi, because the characters are that flat. It's like, this is the bad guy, this is the rogue that's going to help us out, and I mean, it's just got so many problems. I think the effects are good, but I kept waiting to see when the money was going to show up. I was like, okay, if it's that expensive, it's probably lots of action and special effects. All the action happens in the last half hour, and I kept waiting for it. I was like, okay, where's there like a big fight at the end of Act 1 or a big battle at the midpoint? And it's just like none of that happens. And so the pacing is also a huge chore about this too. I was just waiting for it to like show me where you spent $300 million. Couldn't really see it. It's so cliche. It's so uninspired. Millie Bobby Brown is supposed to be a high schooler, and it's like she's a woman in her early 20s. She looks like a woman in her early 20s. She doesn't look like the 15-year-old you're attempting to pass her off as. So this has a lot of problems, lots to talk about, but there are some things that work.
Yeah. So Joe and Anthony Russo acquired the rights to Electric State, the graphic novel, in 2017. Everything that has been changed from their graphic novel fundamentally comes from those two people, because those are the people who bought the rights to it and were like, we're going to make this a thing. And everything they added, I think, makes it worse. I think everything in here is worse. our actors, there aren't many actors in this movie. It's mostly CGI bots and voice actors, right? Like, and it's funny because even the actors we get mostly are operating these Neurocaster drones, which are just CGI robots. So you got Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt, who are our two leads, who are awful. Like, neither of them really work here. I used
just
to
cash the check. Just cash the
genuinely,
check.
I watched Electric State and went Googling, like, is Millie Bobby Brown a bad actress? Like, have I just not been wise to this? Like, what's going on? And Pratt, meanwhile, like, has a god-awful haircut. That does get turned into a couple of jokes later, like as a self-referential, like Deadpool. Like, look how bad his haircut is, right? Don't you notice? But meanwhile, the two of them have to act aside green screens. Half the time, they're not acting across from anybody. Like, they're just acting in a green screen room or across somebody in green screen, and they're just going to fit the CGI bot in later. So you have two people who already only really work well in, like, group casts, right? Like large pictures with a bunch of people around them, surrounded by literally nobody on set. They're just acting across tennis balls. Tough. Along with them, you got Giancarlo Esposito, who plays the same villain he's played for the past decade, but only like in a chair. It's a drone version of him, and they just like put a PNG on the Neurocaster drone's face. So he's not even really in the movie. Stanley Tucci, who is playing our kind of big head of center villain, who's like just getting the check. Like he very obviously
Everyone in
is
this
just,
movie is just getting the check.
He showed up for the half day. He's getting the check. It's fine. They spent so much money CGIing robots into this instead of like actors with talent who are so much cheaper. And it's like, oh God, like just a crucial misstep in budgeting and planning here. Like in an effort to give the Electric State a larger structure with like funny characters and more heart and more of a villain at its center, as opposed to like the more ethereal nature of the graphic novel, like they have way overspent and way overimagined like the direction this should be going with the robots and the CGI.
Yeah. So, gosh, I don't even know where to start. So it's so expensive, but at the same time, you can see the corner cutting. Like a lot of the robots are like kind of drone operated, and they have these terrible helmet designs that the drone operators wear. But then that means people like Giancarlo Esposito and Stanley Tucci, to a degree, don't actually have to act in person because their face is just the screen on a robot. And it's like, you did that on Zoom and they just captured it and then put it on the, like, that's how it looks. And I know with voice acting, you can do some of that over Zoom. And that's exactly what a lot of this looks. We get good actors for like a couple of minutes. There's characters who just kind of show up and then disappear for one reason or another. Like Ke Huy Quan is in this. Woody Harrelson is in this as a voice of Mr. Peanut. Coincidentally, there is an ad for Mr. Peanut before the movie starts. So it's like some real corporate like collaboration going on. It's also a 90s like a millennial nostalgia bait because it takes place in 94, and like, you know, they have wired phones, and like the soundtrack is all 90s movies. Millie Bobby Brown's haircut is like from the 90s as well. So it's millennial pandering at its worst, and it's so boring. Like, oh my God, get somewhere.
Yeah,
they spend some of that money on pacing.
Yes, they go to a shopping mall. Yeah, the trip across the U.S. is actually just like a trip across the desert. It's much smaller in this movie. And you're right. Like, its biggest crime is that it's boring. My God, how did you make a $320 million robot movie boring? Like, somehow the Russo brothers managed to do it. And that makes me think that, like, I genuinely think these guys are best as hired guns. I feel like every time they've approached a project with their own creative endeavor behind it, it hasn't worked out great. But if they're doing like Marvel's bidding and they're just putting together the Avengers movie, right? Like it's connecting the red string on the corkboard, it seems to kind of work. That's the hope with the next Avengers movies, right? Because they're the guys behind those coming up. And like this and Gray Man, terrible. Like just really bad and boring and doesn't work. And it's like, they're so expensive, dude. Like, this works in the small Netflix ecosystem where Netflix can afford to blow $300 million because they make $300 billion a month or whatever. Like, the idea that this will keep subscribers maybe hanging out for another couple weeks might work. But on a larger scale, Electric State would not survive in a movie theater. This would be a huge bomb. Variety would be reporting on how much of a bomb Electric State is. Everybody would be saying it's terrible. Like, it just does not work. It's not funny. It's not action packed. It's a whole lot of actors working on green screen. And like the funny thing is, I say it's not funny, and here I spring into the funny thing, but I think the funny thing is the original work, Electric State, like has all of this dystopian advertising, and like it's like the world of Wall-E, right? It's like America got way past the point of no return, and everybody just plugged into their hubs and just wanted to avoid it, and it rotted the world away. And like what's left for this girl and her robot to travel through is like this hellscape right out of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which is full of like dystopian advertising and old Burger King neon signs, and it's like junk. And that creates a feeling of loneliness and isolation. In the Electric State, though, by abandoning that loneliness and isolation, all you've got left is the uncanny valley of knowing that you're watching Chris Pratt alone in a room, like jumping around and grunting, and like they're just CGIing everything else in. It's like, it doesn't work. The uncanny valley is too wide for this robot movie, and it's boring. And every time action happens, your eyes glaze over because you know there's nothing to it. You're kind of just waiting for the next scene to happen. It's a movie to do your laundry to. It's a movie to check your phone to. Like, how does a $300 million movie happen like this? It's crazy.
Yeah, Hollywood loves to destroy books, is what I'm learning. We saw M. Night Shyamalan do this both with Old and Knock at the Cabin. Like those original works are much more serious, much more adult, and deal with difficult subjects. And then the movie version is just like so watered down for general audiences, and this is what's kind of happening here too. The other thing, it has the kid gloves on constantly. Like no one has like a real gun. They have like an electrode thing that kind of stuns you and knocks you down. A lot of the robots that are kind of killed off screen or like killed or destroyed that you didn't really know who they were in the first place. Millie Bobby Brown is given a paintball gun. Like, she's not even given like a real weapon. It was just like, it's the most kid glove thing ever.
Yeah. The lighting is washed. It all looks generic. None of it looks, I don't know. None of it provides the escapism that I think, like a fraction of the escapism that the novel provides. I keep gushing about the novel, and doing research about it after watching the film, I am so much more looking forward to reading the novel and enjoying like the large scale art that is in there, because I think that has the zeal that the Electric State wants to have on Netflix. Like these old looking robots and this old timey look and this dystopian kind of future, all that comes from the novel. Everything the Russo brothers brought to this is bad. Everything else they added is worse. Yeah. Like, I think everything else they stacked on top of that formula has made it worse. And so I'm looking forward to getting that book. I need to order it, honestly. Like, I was doing some research, and it looks really cool. In the meantime, we should get to final recommendations. Any other thoughts on this one, Andy?
No, I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Netflix's The Electric State?
Oh man, hard pass. I don't even know where to begin. It's so uninspired. It's so boring for $300 million. The pacing is terrible. All the action happens at the end. If you're interested, just watch the last half hour. That's where all the cool stuff happens. It's so generic. Everyone is checked out. Everyone is just cashing a check. Chris Pratt is playing the same character he has for like the last 10 movies with a terrible wig. Millie Bobby Brown is so checked out. She's got to get away from Netflix, man. Like, I'm sure it's a sweet paycheck, but like, she needs to do real movies, because I think she has a lot of talent and is probably a good actor, but man, she's got to get away from it. Very uninspired, really boring. Last half hour. Watch the highlights on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Electric State is not worth your time. I would say go get the novel. It's $20 on Amazon. That's about the price of a Netflix subscription for a month, right? Like, maybe that's the wrong angle, but like, I'm telling you, the paintings in this novel are like achingly beautiful. It really does look great. I'm looking forward to getting a copy. The movie is just a shell of that, like, hilariously, because the movie is also trying to comment on like the emptiness of advertising and like a world that's cold, and like somehow Electric State manages to become the very thing it's sworn to destroy. A miss from Netflix. Not worth your time. Go watch. If you want to see good Chris Pratt, go watch one of the Guardians movies. If you want to see good Millie Bobby Brown, go check out old Stranger Things. Like, this ain't it, man. It's a flash in the pan. Looks better than it is. And with that, we need to talk about one more film this week. My God, an action-packed episode, like I've been saying this whole time. I'm going to be giving the summary on this one, so please excuse my clumsy delivery. The movie is The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie.